So we're lucky enough to have two experts here. So we're now changing focus to international, because many of you will statistically go overseas. And one of the anxieties many of us have is having to put our trust in providers who are a long way away from where we are, when they've got our embryos and our little babies in utero and all our money. So what's important for us to know, when we're lucky to have these guys here, Louise is actually based in Spain, because Alaya has a Spain office and a Ukraine office. And you're actually English background, aren't you?
Yeah,
from the UK.
British. So I have a Spanish husband, so I've been in Spain now for 10 years.
Yeah, okay. And of course, Ella's local here in Sydney, so she's really handy. So we're lucky to have you both. You both know a lot about the process, both from an IVF point of view and the surrogacy agency point of view. We're going to focus on the US and Ukraine particularly today, because that's your expertise, but these things would apply anywhere, I think. Ella, let's start with you. In the US, what should intending parents look for in an IVF clinic in regard to communication proficiency before they sort of choose a clinic? Is there anything they can check with to check?
Sure. Look, I guess with US IVF clinic, probably the number one thing you're looking for is a Sydney-based representative to help you. Failing that, look, in terms of clinics, it's really a try before you buy situation. So any clinic in the US will pretty much allow you to have a Skype consultation with the doctor for free beforehand. Right. In those consultations, in my practice in particular, the case manager, who's really your sort of Indian spirit guide on your journey, they will lead you forth. You'll meet them in your initial consultation as well. That's one of those no obligation things, so you can try it out, and you should. And the same with agencies in the US, you should talk to them, because you're looking not necessarily for particular communication things, but a level of communication that matches yours, that makes you feel comfortable and confident that the clinic has your back and the agency understands your needs and your wants. And
before that sort of introductory Skype call, do you have to send over sort of medical records or test results? Or was that too early for that first call? No. So for that first call, you'll just be asked for basic information, like basic demographic information, who the parents are. So, and then you'll share any relevant medical information that you have with the doctor. If your case, particularly if you're a heterosexual couple and you've been through a lot of IVF, the doctor at that stage may ask for you to send some more information so that he can make a more have a better idea of what the best options are for you moving forward are based on your past history. But the other great thing is that in those first consultations, the doctor will say perhaps have some testing done, just basic stuff to make sure that you're healthy. And for you guys, having a sperm analysis here, because the last thing we want you to do is fly over to the US to find out that you have a problem with sperm, and that deletes it. So we will organise with your local doctor to do those basic testing to make things, to knock out as many barriers before you jump on a plane and come to Vegas. Yeah. And Louise, what about for Ilaya in Ukraine? Is there a similar thing where you can do a consult with a doctor beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a language barrier, an obvious language barrier with the Ukraine, so this is one of the reasons we have the Spain office. I'm a case manager, so the communication, the initial Skype is usually with myself. But again, there's a list of tests before you come over, which you're happy to give to me, and I pass on to the clinic for the doctor to review before you come. It's actually a requirement for the Ministry of Health in Ukraine. So before you start and before you commit to any kind of process, obviously they'll be checked over by the doctor, the spermogram, and all the tests before you fly over. So.
Okay. What sort of communication, again, should you look for from a Ukraine IVF clinic?
I think transparency more than anything, just making sure doing your homework, checking it out, reasonable response time as well, and not shying away from the hard questions. Obviously it's a huge commitment, and it's a lot of money, and it's a lot of thing from you guys. So I think just finding the right clinic and feeling that you're comfortable, and the relationship that you have with them as well is very important.
For both of you, if a parent's got questions of the IVF clinic and they want to follow up results or something, do they email you guys direct or the doctor? How does that work?
Well, in my case, it would be via the Spain office again for the language barrier. So, I mean, you all have a consultation with the doctor in person when you come to Kiev, but the communication is with our office.
Right. What about you guys, Ella?
Yeah, so as I said, so if before the process, people will often come and talk to me. I'll speak to them, I'll pass them through. Once they've had their medical consultation, they have a case manager. That person will largely be the only person that you will communicate with other than the doctor.
Right.
They will be your person within our clinic. I usually, particularly with Australian clients, I keep my eye on everything, but they're really the person who has all the answers for you. In terms of communication, my biggest thing with Australian clients is just to set that expectation level. You should get prompt response, but if you send an email at 5 o'clock Australia time, it's midnight in Vegas, so don't be sitting there refreshing, waiting for that thing to come through. They will respond to you in the morning, but just keep in mind there may be some lag with the time differences.
I assume at the start of the process you've got to sign a contract with your agency, your clinic. Do you have to be there in person to sign that, or can they send it over to you to sign here, or electronically? Or?
You can electronically sign and send back to us.
What about you guys, Louise?
The initial consultation contract that you'd sign with the Spain office, you can do that remotely, you can do that online, that's fine, electronically. And then the second contract, yes, you would need to be in Kiev when you sign the main agreement. Obviously, you need a consultation with the doctor, you'll need to leave a sample, so in that initial stage, that's when you would sign the main agreement.
Okay, so you go to Ukraine for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So are you both saying the sort of staff members you deal with day-to-day case managers? That's correct, is it?
Yeah, I mean, everything's done. You have a personal manager, and that person would manage your entire case. They would send you all the details over everything. That's your point of contact.
Yeah, yeah. And is that from the surrogacy agency point of view as well? I know, Louise, you guys do surrogacy and the IVF, so is the same person who manages both?
Yeah, I mean, in most cases, I'm the British-speaking person in the office. We have a multilingual team, but in most cases, it'd probably be myself.
Right, right. And Ella, in the States, I assume you'd have a case manager at the surrogacy agency and someone else at the IVF clinic, yeah?
Yeah, that's correct. And each agency has a different structure, but most of the time they'll have a case manager in charge of the intended parents and the welfare of the intended parents, and they have a coordinator who's in charge of the welfare of the surrogate. We're similarly structured, so we have a case manager and each of them has a clinical coordinator. The clinical coordinator will do all of the sort of logistical details with the egg donors and the gestational carriers. The case manager will be your contact. And they also work with the agency. And so we initially when we work with agencies, and particularly ones we work with frequently, we'll have a shorthand. They'll know exactly what information they need. So we try and make it as seamless as possible. And, I mean, a lot of the work happens behind the scenes. Yeah.
On that point about behind the scenes, what sort of staff members are working behind the scenes on their behalf? What sort of professionals don't these guys see?
That you don't see. We have a team of nurses who do all of the procedural work. So we have our surgical facility within the practice. They are involved. We have an embryology team who you barely see.
And what are they doing, the embryology?
The embryology, so when we're doing your egg collections, they're using your sperm that you've left with us and either your eggs or the eggs of your donor to create your embryos and grow them out over the first 5 days. Also doing your things like your genetic testing. So in the US, it's quite popular because we also have the ability to gender select. So it's quite a popular thing. So they will look at that for you, and they'll communicate over the first 5 days as to the growth of your embryos and the health of those embryos to help you make a decision about what you're going to transfer.
The embryologist will?
The embryologist will do that. Sometimes it's the doctor, but the embryologists are the magic makers. They're really important, and I often think the embryologist is a really underappreciated and underestimated part of your surrogacy journey because and particularly for Australians, because we are here in Australia, it is so hard to find a surrogate, and so we feel like that is the most important thing. But if you can't put a bad cake batter into a good oven and expect it to work, so embryology is really important. And the way that you can sort of look at that is looking at success rates for clinics, and that will give you some idea of the quality of the embryology and the medicine that they practice.
Yeah, yeah. What about you guys, Louise? You have the same sort of staff behind the scenes?
Yeah, I mean, to coordinate a surrogacy process, there's obviously loads of people behind that you don't see. We have the logistics teams, which is us in the office. There's obviously lots of nurses, doctors, embryologists, midwives. We have a legal team as well, so lawyers, notaries. There's loads and loads of people involved.
Right. And does Ella mention success rates? Can you get audited success rates from Ukraine clinics? Is it?
You can, yes. I mean, it's obviously something that's important as well, looking at success rates. At LIA, we typically deal with very difficult IVF cases, so lots of people that have had failed IVF attempts. So.
Right, okay. How long after an embryo transfer, this is really an anxious process of people, they hear from you guys you're doing an embryo transfer the next day. How long after that do you tell them whether it was successful or not?
We do a HCG test, a pregnancy test on the surrogate at 10 days.
10 days,
yeah. So which is, I think, is pretty standard. It's pretty standard.
I think it's about 2 weeks in Ukraine to confirm pregnancy.
And so that is the first thing that happens. And then at about 6 weeks, for us, we're doing, or 6 to 7 weeks, we're doing an ultrasound to check for heartbeat. And then at 10 weeks, the surrogate is discharged to their own obstetrician because, like at that stage, it's just like any normal practice. And the same would happen if you were doing IVF yourself. At that point, you move to your own obstetrician who manages the pregnancy from that point on.
Right. How excited can people get if there's a positive pregnancy at 2 weeks? Should they get excited then, or do lots of them drop out between the sort of 2 and 6 week mark?
It's kind of hard. It's hard to say. Yeah. I mean, obviously.
I suppose I'm talking about egg donor IVF where there's good embryos.
Look. So in our clinic, our success rate is about 80 to 85% per transfer. So it's actually pretty high, and that's to pregnancy and live birth is not far off that. So that's the important thing. So again, when you're looking at those success rates, live birth rate is the number that you really want to have a look at, because pregnancy is great, live birth is a hell of a lot better. So, and what you're after.
Okay. What about, Louise, your agency also works directly with the surrogates. How do you recruit those surrogates?
This is done by a team in Kiev. We have people on the ground. Obviously, I don't speak Russian myself, so the language barrier again. This is managed internally within the team. We have somebody who takes care of recruiting the surrogates, and also for the supervision of the program. So.
And what level of communication can Australian intending parents expect with their surrogate in Ukraine?
Well, we provide translation. My colleague in the office usually coordinates Skype calls, so, although it's a little bit more difficult and you can't speak to her maybe directly, we can organise regular Skype calls for her, so you'll always be in contact, and of course you're welcome to have and engage in you can swap contact details, there's no problem in that. And
does surrogate do that from her home computer, or?
Yeah, I mean, usually she logs on, and sometimes we have a three-way Skype, so we have the translator and the intended parents and the surrogate.
Yeah. Okay, and we heard yesterday quite a bit from the parents about how they communicated with their American surrogate, so I think we're clear that's often a very regular communication if you want it.
I think, and that's the thing about the US system is be honest about what you want in terms of communication, because there is choice. And you don't want to be in a situation where you have really different expectations from your surrogate in terms of what you want in communication and relationships. So just be upfront and be honest. It is possible to have whatever you want. If that's zero communication, there are absolutely surrogates in the US who are happy with that. And if you want to move in and start a commune, there's surrogates who are absolutely happy with that as well.
I noticed yesterday on a panel, I think it was one IP who they did it every 2 weeks, they did a call, and another one who did it every day. Yeah, with their surrogate, I guess it varies. Okay, what about surrogate compensation? How regularly is that paid to the surrogate? Is it sort of every month they get a payment, or how does it work?
In the US, it varies from agency to agency, but essentially compensation in the US isn't actually, you're not paying for the baby, so it often doesn't mean you get a bunch of money at the end. You're paying for the pain and suffering, or for the pregnancy. So it usually gets paid at regular intervals, so monthly intervals. It's usually split up in 10 payments. Some agencies will also have procedural fees, so you'll pay some at the time. For intended parents, though, the way things work, and the thing that I'd heard you to look for in any American agency that you're talking to is an escrow account, which is a trust account. So actually you put all of your money into that escrow account at the beginning. So it's a big chunk of what happens. And what that does is it's held by an independent lawyer, and that makes sure that the money is there for the surrogate should you guys decide to not pay, run out of cash and things like that. And there have been situations where intended parents have left surrogates with the baby.
Right,
And that basically means that that surrogate isn't out all of her compensation and then has a child that she may choose to care for.
Yeah, and I think you and I know that it's actually far more common than the surrogate keeping the baby because
so
she wants to. Yeah.
I believe the statistic is over the last 20 years in the US, 18 surrogates have attempted to keep the baby and none of them have been successful, and 85 sets of intended parents have not come to collect their baby.
Okay, interesting.
So that's actually far more likely.
Okay.
So
wow. Louise,
don't be worried about them keeping the baby.
Louise, in Ukraine, how do the payments work for surrogates?
So the surrogate receives a monthly compensation, but she also receives bigger sums in instalments. So it's broken down over, and it's based on milestones.
And does the intending parent pay direct to the surrogate or to you guys directly?
No, we pay for everything. We manage that internally in the clinic. So you guys don't have to worry about absolutely anything. It's all managed internally.
So they just pay you guys and you manage it?
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. Questions from the audience? Anyone have any questions about these processes they want to sort of drill down on? Yeah. Where's that microphone-y thing?
Here we go. Good.
Here we go. Adam,
where's the question?
Just throw it at the guy.
Thank you. I'll try not to break anything. You spoke about the embryo testing and the genetic testing. For us poor lay people, are there differences in clinics and quality, or is there an international standard of genetic testing or the way the fertilisation happens in the labs? Because it seems to be a proliferation of labs all around the world.
Yeah, look, so there are. We're currently using next generation sequencing. So there's a couple of different types of genetic testing as well. I'm not sure if someone explained those yesterday, but the initial genetic testing that we do checks that there's the correct number of chromosomes. So there should be 2 sets of each, and so we check to make sure there's 2 sets of each. So what that eliminates are your most common things like Down syndrome, trisomies, deletions, things like that. So things that are going to probably end up with a child that's very ill or not a successful pregnancy. So we can knock those out pretty easily. There's a second level of genetic testing, which is when we know something. So if we know that one of the intended parents has a genetic condition or has that genetic condition within their family, we can go and specifically look for that gene. But the gene structure is so crazy and complex that you can't just go and hope you'll find something, because it's you know, like sitting in the middle of the ocean with a fishing rod. It's just impossible. But we can. So there are different levels of that. I have heard overseas of different levels of genetic testing. I believe that there's a 5.
Yeah, I mean, in Ukraine we do a 5, a 9 and a 24. Most people don't go for 9, they either go for 5.
Were you talking about 5 or 9 or what?
Chromosomes.
So just explain that to the audience, what do you mean by 5 or 9 chromosomes?
So basically there's 23 or 24 chromosomes, so sets of chromosomes. So 5, as Sally was saying, it tests for the most common genetic diseases, like could be Down syndrome, I think Patau syndrome.
Yep.
And then the full spectrum, you can look at every single one of them. That's usually only if you know that you have a hereditary disease and you're looking for that.
And do you guys generally recommend those tests are done, or only for people who are at high risk?
Look, it's absolutely up to you. There is an additional cost for the test because it is, like, they are reasonably expensive.
Yeah.
For the majority of my couples who are using an egg donor, our egg donors in the US are absolutely under 30 years of age and often significantly younger than that. And it's really up to you. So we'll explain the risk and the chances of having abnormal embryos, and then it's up to you to decide if you want to do that. We do, like I said, have, because we do have the option to gender select, that often is the reason why people will do PG, genetic testing.
Other questions? Yeah. Well, Yep, there is.
How much is the sort of test? I'm sorry. How much is the testing, the chromosomal testing in the States?
US it's about
it's included in some of the packages that we offer, but for PGD5, it's 1,500 euros, which I think is Australian dollars ballpark. 2 and a bit. 2,000 for 9.
Is that per embryo?
No, any embryos you obtain, we'll do the test on all of them. So if you get 8, we'll do it on 8. You get 10, we'll do it on 10.
So the cost is for testing all of them?
Yeah, so the States, with our clinic, and from what I understand, we're about ballpark, it is expensive. It's $4,725 for the first 8 embryos, and then $250 for any embryo on top of that you want to do. Right. Keep in mind, you don't have to. So if we've got your embryos in the lab, and we will look at the best 8, and you can perhaps choose, the ones that look the best, which in normal circumstance, if we weren't doing the genetic testing, we start with the best embryo and then move down the line. So you might choose just to do those first 8. You could actually, after that, and the chances of you burning through those 8 are very unlikely in our clinic, but we could then defrost the extra embryos and do that testing if you wanted to. Having said that, if you've been through 8 genetically tested embryos and have not been successful, then there are other conversations that need to be had about the chances of success with the lower grade embryos, and perhaps the answer is to look at a new cycle. I mean, it's not something that we want to do, but we also want you to be successful rather than transferring and transferring and transferring.
Yeah. Other questions anyone's got about these communication issues? No? Okay, that's great. Just before we break for morning tea, Olivia at the front desk has organised some prize for the person who uses the mobile app the most, and they'll be given out about 2:30. So if you are using the app, remember that there is a prize for someone who communicates on it the most. Thank you so much. These guys will be around, I'm sure, during the rest of the day to answer more questions. We'll see you back here at 11:30. All right.